Welcome to this Java Break with Basis. My name is Nico Spence. I'm the Chairman and CEO of Basis International. And today we're going to continue our series of success stories, but with a little bit of a different twist. A more generic success of how one can caffeinate your CUI or GUI app with GUI Sprinkles. So let's get started. Our session agenda today, we're going to cover a technology overview, look at the business challenge that many of you face in your day-to-day delivery of solutions. We'll look at the sample solution. We'll look at a demonstration. This will be a very hands-on session today. And then we'll cover in depth how we did it. And then we'll show you some Barista promotions, some programs that'll help you get started. And I'll be joined by Paul Yeomans, our product manager, to take you through those. And then we'll look at the summary of benefits and take your questions. Firstly, our series technology overview. As we've seen before, we've looked at varied deployments, and today we're going to cover all of these. Large user count Pro 5 systems can invoke BBJ programs via the X-Core, or they could be run in concert against the same database with the same file locking mechanisms. We'll also look at moderate 5 to 25 user count Visual Pro 5 systems and large user count BBJ systems. Varied features. Today we're going to look specifically at how Barista can get you these GUI sprinkles in your GUI or CUI application. So what's our business challenge? We want to modernize our legacy CUI or GUI application. Essentially, we want to give the user more control of their data via a GUI grid. It's very hard to do in Visual Pro 5. The logic for grids is less well developed in our Windows only based product, but much easier in BBJ, our cross-platform graphical development environment. BBJ's grid support is certainly a lot more powerful than Visual Pro 5's, but we've abstracted it one further layer, and we're utilizing Barista. And in doing so, we can do it in less than 10 lines of code. So our sample solution is going to take a stepwise approach. We're going to use the Barista Rapid Application Development Tool to add the GUI sprinkles to either our CUI or GUI apps, and we're going to instantly receive some of Barista's enormous benefits. We'll get the GUI lookup grid launched from the CUI or GUI app. Today we'll focus on a character-based app. And then we get built-in filtering of that data, ability to reorder the columns. We'll have options of creating a print preview on screen to page through, or create PDFs, XLS, CSV, XML, or Google Doc formats. We can fax it, email it, and automatically archive it, all part of the built-in functionality of the building blocks that are incorporated into Barista. So a quick refresher of what Barista gives you. It's our data dictionary-based application development framework and runtime engine, and we'll really be exploiting that aspect of the runtime engine today. It facilitates new GUI application development, conversion of CUI apps to GUI, and we'll see this sort of bridging technology today by incorporating GUI sprinkles into our CUI app. And of course, we can modernize existing GUI apps if they don't have powerful grid features by merely inserting those 10 lines of code to invoke the Barista grid GUI lookup. Barista is a standard framework for handling navigation, display, search, and file maintenance. And it interactively links the database to the user, and that'll be our big focus today. It delivers functional GUI apps on multiple platforms, so not platforms specific to Windows, gives you a modern look and feel, and provides standardized keyboard and mouse navigation. No need to have to always go to the mouse, so there will be keyboard shortcuts for anything that you might need to do with the mouse. And it's going to leverage our built-in SQL-based inquiry engine. And we'll see more about that in a bit. The benefits are that the developers receive enormous productivity gains. What does that mean? It translates into you being more efficient and being able to serve more of your customers in the same period of time. And of course, lowers the development costs to your customers by potentially a fraction or a factor of 10. So it'll save you on your initial product development. Your future application maintenance is significantly reduced, and future enhancements are easy to apply and may even come courtesy of the tool itself. Users can then self-serve casual reporting needs via the inquiry engine, as we'll see in our demonstration. So let's move on to that demonstration. And this session today is mirrored in our latest Advantage magazine, which will be hitting your mailboxes very shortly and your inboxes. And we have an article there that talks about Barista caffeinating a CUI app with GUI Sprinkles. So let's have a look at this in action. For our demonstration today, we'll start with the lowest common denominator. We'll be having a look at a CD Jazz character user interface application. And I've loaded this up into the Basis IDE, mounted the file system. And if we look down here into the prog directory, I'll double click on the employee maintenance program. And let's actually bring that up into full screen mode. So familiar code to many of you, very basic line numbered code. Let's run this code and we'll see, let me minimize that IDE, and here it is. Here's our program that allows us to have a look at the employees within the company. And of course we probably have some character-based lookup, but let's have a look at the new GUI grid lookup that we've added. Press F3 and up comes our GUI grid lookup. So this is the default. It comes out just from the very get-go, but as we start saving some of the information, it'll remember these as defaults for the next time it comes up. The first thing I want to do is go and toggle fit columns to grid. That'll just give us a bit more of a pleasing layout. Make sure we're not overusing the space that's in place. And there it is. It all fits into this one screen. And let's show you some of the functionality you now have. So of course we could just be looking at something sorted by last name. So if I click on that, it'll sort by last name. And then I can actually use the shift button and sort by first name within last name. So thereafter we'll see Abby sorted by Aaron first and then Steve and Abby. And if I double click on one of these, it'll return that value back to the character-based app. But let's go and do the lookup again, and let's see what other functionality we have available to us. Firstly, some quick visual clues. The little key down here tells us this is the keyed field. If we had keys on the last name and first name, then those would show up as well. And of course, a quick reminder, you can always add keys without having to change any of your existing code. Just add the keys, the write record statement with a key equals. The interpreter is intelligent enough to know that it's a multi-keyed M-keyed file, for example, and it will ignore the key equals. So you're safe to move forward with that sort of change. But let's make a few other changes. You'll notice up here on the top right we have this option to do some filtering. So let's do some filtering. What we're going to do is select just our hourly paid employees. So this is a great tool for our users to be able to simply come in here and start adding this sort of functionality. So if we add that, immediately it shows us with a little asterisk at the top that this column has had a filter applied to it. And we can save this, and that'll allow us to look at this report later on merely by clicking on this button at the top. So we can have the drop-down list, clear it and see all employees, or select just the hourly paid employees. So your users could add a whole host of different subsets of the information that you offer up to them in the query. Now there are a couple other things we can do. Now that we have just the hourly paid employees, this column is pretty much redundant. So let's go in and look at the inquiry columns, and again the user can go and set up that they don't want to see that column. Somebody, they may decide that they want to see the first name before the last name, so we can change that. And let's redo our sorting then. So there it is, different order. That same information is now available to us. Of course, that's not all. What we can also do now is output this information into a whole host of various formats. Firstly, let's have a look at exporting, and our data selection mode is either all query records or just the highlighted rows. And then we can send it out to the docout, document output viewer, or we can send it out to a PDF file, XLS spreadsheet type file. Let's first start out with the document output viewer. And so there it is. There's a report that's available to us. And now we can go and save as all the various options that you might expect: PDF, XML, spreadsheet, etc. Let's cancel that. The other option we have, and that's the document output selection we saw earlier on. We can go directly there, but we can determine that we want to save it, we want to fax it, we want to email it, we want to save it as a PDF to disk, and we can also launch it thereafter, immediately after saving it. Let's cancel that. And so a lot of choices here. This is a print preview window. Really, as I said, it's almost like a simple reporting system. The other option I wanted to show you is that we could export these records as well to, say, a spreadsheet. And by default, this is going to be served up by my local machine, which I don't have a security certificate for, so I'll proceed anyway. You saw it did a download. This is from Chrome, and it's automatically launching Excel. That's my default for opening up XLS file types. And here we are. We have a chance to see that data presented to us in an Excel spreadsheet. And so we could do the similar functionality by exporting to PDF. So those options are all available to us. We could also just copy and paste into another document, and we have further choices there, including the database table and column name, include the text column headings, set our delimiters, whatever we'd like them to be, and our text identifiers, single quote, double quote, etc. So really powerful functionality, all available to you at your fingertips and available to the end users, and helps them self-serve and be more productive in their business operations from a day-to-day approach. Let's have a look at one other really nice feature, the search. We can do a wildcard type search. If you recall, in the early, or as we'll show you later on, we've identified that both these columns should be case insensitive in our searching, and so we could check for anything that has a wildcard like Erson, and it brings up the Andersons and the Hendersons as an example here. Let's just limit that just to the Sons, and obviously a host more names that match those criteria. So very powerful functionality. We could also, as I said earlier on, just look at the first name, case insensitive, brings up all the C's under the last name. So really powerful functionality, really a useful productivity tool for your end users. So I suppose the big question is, how much code do we have to write to make all this happen? Well, let's move on and pick up on the answer to that question in a minute. I promised you less than 10 lines of code to insert into your GUI app to be able to invoke this grid lookup. And as I promised, here it is. So let's have a look at these, in fact, 8 lines of code and step through them. Firstly, we need to determine the BBJ installation directory. So these 2 lines do that. We get a system property of the config directory, and we set BBJ home $ to be that directory path. Next, we set up a unique name for the group namespace variable that we would like to use for the return value. What we're going to be doing is calling, in other words, running a system call to BBJ to generate this grid lookup. And the way we're going to communicate back to our standard character-based app is through the namespace. A namespace is a concept in BBJ that allows us to share information across different invocations, different processes, different BBx interpreter sessions. So we set up a unique name with a PID number, process ID number, using the info 3,0. And next we need to actually do the scall. So we invoke the Barista query via the scall using the -w argument to telling Barista to wait until the user dismisses the query by closing the window or making a selection. And we pass that info back. Here we're actually specifying the name of the query down here. CDJ_EMPL is the name of our query, as you will see in a minute. And then we query the group namespace variable to retrieve the selected employee number stored in the value. If the user closes the grid lookup without making a selection, the namespace will not exist and the error equals path will be followed, or it'll be empty. And if we had multiple selections that were being allowed, if we were selecting multiple rows, you can handle that with the caret character And then all we need to do is load the employee ID into the same input variable as though the user had keyed the ID into the character program. So let's go through the steps in sequence. Firstly, we needed to create a Barista app. That means we tell Barista that we want to create some components to be used in our app, and we need to give it a name. We'll take you through that example in a minute. In that same process, we'll show you how to import the data dictionary into Barista. What happens if you don't have a data dictionary? Really, there's no problem. You can create one for the tables that you wish to import. Cut the string template for your table from your application code, wherever you might have your IO list or your string template. Paste that into the data dictionary editor in the Enterprise Manager or in the IDE. And voila, you've got the data dictionary. The Barista import creates element types and table definitions, and from that generates automatic maintenance forms, automatic reports, and inquiry system. Let me hand you over to Ralph Lance, our senior software engineer responsible for the Barista project, to show you how this is done.
First thing you do in order to create an application in Barista is go into the Create Application menu item, and in our case for this demonstration we will choose from our training a CDJS configuration that I pre-configured. Essentially, you go through the wizard and you fill out the wizard in order to identify your application. You click Next and you choose which language or languages you'd like to make available for your application. Choose Next and you can define the modules that your application contains. In our case, it's just one module, and we give it an ID CDJ. Now, a combination of what's called the company and the product ID allows you to utilize the basis licensing system to protect your intellectual property. We'll choose Next and Next a couple of times in order to get these global variables set up within inside of the Barista configuration, so Barista knows where to look, as well as for the query system, which utilizes the SQL engine and the config.ini file where globals can also be used. We'll click Next and we're all finished, so we can create the application. This will create the definition of the application, and through the synchronize process you pull in a definition of an application into Barista and you make it available to Barista. So that's done lickety-split. Now the next step that you will do is you go into the Barista development by a brand new application, and you would need to import the existing tables that are contained within inside the basis data dictionary for your application. Now ours is located in the training project folder for the CDJS. It's a bbdict directory. We'll give the application prefix CDJ. Now the prefix is used to prefix things like table names and element names, which essentially hold description information about the tables and elements of table columns, and allows us to more easily find our application specific objects within inside of Barista. So it's a good idea to have an application prefix. We'll choose Next. We see a list of the columns or fields that are contained within our data dictionary, as well as the general data global that we will want to change to our specific CDJS global. We'll click Next a few times. We'll choose the tables to import, and we'll let Barista import these tables. We're all done. And we see on the left-hand side, Barista has built a menu for us using the application description information. Within inside the menu we have the tables that were contained within inside of our basis data dictionary. We're interested in seeing what Barista has out of the box for the employee table. The employee table is the employee file. So here's the GUI version of the employee maintenance that we looked at inside our legacy application. And without doing anything, I have record navigation, record deletion confirmation. I have a built-in record inquiry in order to very easily search, sort, and filter my data within inside of the file and choose any of the records that I'd like to manage.
So let's imagine we don't have a data dictionary definition for our employees table. How do we go about creating one? Let's have a look at the Basis IDE again, and let's have a look at that actual table. See, down here we have CDJ employees. If we right click on that, we can view the basis data file, select the advisory lock-in or what kind of lock-in type we want, and there's the contents of the data file. We can tab through it and have a look at it. We can also view it by providing a record template. So let's go and start with looking at a record template. So if we double click on this second profile program here, we can see that here's our IO list. So 5 elements, and here's a more meaningful list of variable names, but more readable. And to translate that into a string template, we merely need to add the type, whether it's character or numeric, the average length or the maximum length we expect the field to be, and the field delimiter, in this case asterisk, just tells us that it's a 0A. And so we go through the various values and determine the types and the lengths, and that's our string template. So let's cut and paste that, and we'll go and pop it into our little utility. So Control C, and let's go back at this utility, put our record template in there and refresh, and there it is. And you can see us parsing or moving through the table looking at the various values. So that's pretty useful. How do we turn that into a string template, and how do we turn that string template into a data dictionary? So let's go back again to our tool, which is the database configuration. You can either do this from Enterprise Manager or you can do it from the IDE. So if we right click and localhost and do connect, we do this basis standard delivered username password admin123, and there are a list of tables. And if we go to cdjazz, you'll notice that there's no cdj underscore employees. So let's go and create it. So this is how simple it is. We'll go and put table name, and we call it cdj underscore employees. And now what we need to do is add the columns. Well, I don't want to have to type all that stuff, so let's just paste in our string template. And there it is. We'll need to go and give it an index. So let's add an index, and let's give that a more meaningful name. Employee ID. And let's add the segment. And the only segment we're going to have is employee ID. And then if we save dictionary, that's created the table. Let's double click on it again and tell it the details of the file. Now if I remember, that is cdj underscore employees. Let's save dictionary. And let's refresh this view. And there we see it's M-keyed. We can analyze that table. And that'll tell the SQL engine a little more about the contents and how best to access that information. And we'll notice we have a little alert status here. Let's see what that is. We have a new feature in the data dictionary. We can fix the alerts on the selected tables, and it's telling us that it's found a department with a length of 21 characters rather than the 20 we told it would be. So we can apply the fixes, and then we can rerun the analysis. It's a pretty small table, so it shouldn't take too long. Let's do a refresh, and there it is. Status is good. And then we could simply proceed, as Ralph showed us earlier, to import that data dictionary into Barista. So there we have it. Armed with the data dictionary, we can very quickly get our Barista app running. And now our next step is to create a custom query. So we'll run the query definitions feature from within the Barista application framework, and we'll describe the columns or the fields for the query, and they can be sourced from more than one table. Our simple example today, we'll just use the employees table, and we can use the Barista generated SQL to generate our grid query, or you could pop in your own SQL. So very complex SQL can be placed in the custom query, and then we need to test the SQL statement. So let's have a look at how we generate that. Right, let's go across to the Barista application framework and create that custom query. So we'll go to Barista Development, select Query Definitions, and let's create a CDJazz employee query. Call it employee lookup and reporting, because we still have access to the whole of Dockout. Our table alias, so our core primary table that we're going to be looking at, is the CDJazz employees table, and we're going to give some options, allow the user to move the columns, allow them to define filters, allow the output to the document output subsystem, and allow copying to the clipboard. Let's select the application company ID unless you want copy protection, which we have available to you to protect your IP. Contact your account manager to set that up. But otherwise, let's just use the defaults here. And then let's save that information. That's the header information. Now to get the columns that will be showing up in our grid, let's use this drop-down menu list to generate the columns from the data dictionary definition for the CDJazz employees table. We're going to select all the fields and bring those in, and then we'll make a couple of changes. I want case insensitive searching on the last name, so let's tag that, and the first name similarly, we'll tag those. And then let's also change this column header. It doesn't look all that user-friendly as a name. So let's say salary or hourly as our title. Right, so let's save all of those. And let's go up here to the SQL syntax. So the Barista RAD tool is an SQL capable tool, and so we can use SQL to give us the selections for our grid. But that can be quite tedious to type that up yourself, so let's go down here and generate the SQL, have Barista do it for us. So there's the simple select statement from. Of course, this could be a very complex select statement. You could be joining multiple tables, retrieving information from secondary tables and displaying them in this format. So let's go back and save that, and now on our drop down list we can test our query, and there it is. That didn't take us too long. The last and final step is the one we covered earlier, incorporating the new lookup function into the character app. That's our 10 lines of code. Add the new lookup, invoke the query via the scall, and use the namespace to retrieve the user selection. So what about performance? What happens if you don't get very good performance? After all, the user could be selecting on any sort of column and sorting in any sort of space. Well, you can always add the appropriate keys to your table. Use the query analysis tool, which will tell you what sort of queries your users have been running against the table, and then add the keys that you need. Thereafter, reapply the table analysis. You need not be concerned about having added additional keys. Pro5 and BBJ will automatically handle the change. Any code that does a write or a write record with the key equals syntax, which assumes a single keyed mkeyed file, will ignore that key equals clause. the interpreters are intelligent enough to know what kind of file it's writing to and deal with it appropriately. All you might have to worry about is to modify any of your utility programs that may define or redefine that data file. So, how can you get hold of Barista? What's the cost? Let me hand you over to Paul Yeomans, our product manager, to take you through some scenarios and some choices that you have that I think you'll find very attractive.
Thanks, Nico. We've devoted a lot of time presenting the power and functionality that can be brought to your application by adding Barista. So how do you get Barista? Well, there's the traditional method of just adding Barista to your existing basis licenses. And we have two other new ways to present today. A short-term fiscal cliff promotion that we sent out information concerning is designed specifically to create quick prototypes that you can get in front of your end user customers and launch some projects. Additionally, we have an ongoing program called the Kickstart program. Let's start with that fiscal cliff promotion. From now through January 2013, what we'll do is we will add a Barista license to your qualifying BBJ Enterprise Edition license at no charge. On top of that, you'll receive Barista training at no charge. And that Barista training typically goes for $11.85. Big value. What you're responsible for is paying for the nominal SAM fee for that Barista license. What are some of those details? For BBJ Enterprise Edition licenses, they must be covered by SAM. If your licenses are not on SAM, simply add it to qualify for this promotion. What about that SAM coverage for Barista? I know you're thinking that. For the 1 to 10 user range, that's $40 a user. Typically, Barista would be $240 per user. So you see the savings there as well. There are some limits. The limit applies to any number of users up to 20% of the total enterprise license. For example, if you've got a 50 user license, we'd supply a 10 user Barista license at no charge. The Barista training is self-paced with extensive support via the forum. Let's take a moment also to talk about that Kickstart program, which is an ongoing program. Typically, the requirements for deploying a new Barista application include a license upgrade, any reinstatement fees, the edition exchange moving from Standard to Enterprise Edition, and the cost of Barista itself. Under this program, what we have you do is convert your existing Basis license to an annual subscription license. Basis waives the edition exchange fee, moving from Standard to Enterprise, and that can be a significant amount of money. We also provide the Barista license at no charge. So again, what do you receive? 1 year of our software maintenance coverage, SAM coverage, the Enterprise Edition license, and Barista. What you're responsible for is paying for the Basis license upgrade and SAM for Barista and the Enterprise Edition. What the Kickstart program is designed for is to create a fast track for deploying Barista apps by lowering the initial cost to the customer. The program offers substantial savings, converting to a subscription license. We waive the edition exchange fee, and we actually waive the cost of Barista itself. So how can you get Barista? You can simply add it to your existing Basis license or take advantage of one of the two promotions. The short-term fiscal cliff promotion, short-term because it does end at the end of January, or the Kickstart program. The fiscal promotion is designed to give you an opportunity to quickly develop a proof of concept for your corporate buyers. And then, perhaps down the road, you can convert those licenses through the Kickstart program to an annual subscription program. If you have additional questions, contact your account manager.
Let's look at our conclusions. I'm sure you'll agree that it was easy to accomplish our task today. Very low risk, very little change to our existing application, huge dollar value saving to the users, productivity gains, better information equals better decisions, which equals better business results. So what are your next action steps? We suggest you develop a proof of concept, probably less than 1 day's effort. demonstrate that proof of concept to your users, have those selected users identify the priority for implementation, and implement that proof of concept with the aid of the Basis Fiscal Cliff promo or Kickstart program. In summary today, we've looked at how Basis is supplying the tools, the licensed promos and programs so that you can deliver benefit and value to your users with little effort or risk. So go and do it. If you have more success stories to share with us, please contact your account manager. And don't forget to put it on your calendars to attend the TechCon in Las Vegas, May 13th to 15th, and training to follow May 16th to 17th. And of course, look out for that Basis Advantage magazine in your mailboxes and available electronically via our website and via an email that we'll send out to you. Let's take your questions.